So I'll report back on what we did this morning at the interoperability workshop. And for those not, or the ontologies workshop actually, as it's named. So for the things that we've seen today, right? Information in digital twins, information exchange between organizations, between applications. We need some mutual understanding. And this mutual understanding enables the interoperability between the applications. And to this for this purpose, in many projects, people have been working on ontologies. Ontologies for digital twins, or ontologies for components of digital twins, or ontologies for permits. And all of these ontologies are, well, they're sort of separate initiatives. And today we looked at like how could we improve the actual interoperability of these ontologies. So maybe one day, God forbid, but we could even stop building ontologies, or at least lower efforts. So a little quiz, what do these constructions have in common? Well, they're pretty and they're old with something new on top, but they're also all things that have been repurposed. So there was an old building somewhere, or there was an old metro line in New York, and it's no longer in use for what it used to be, but people took what was good and they extended it with something else to make it better for their purpose. Well, maybe we should do the same thing with ontologies. And I recently joined as an active member BDTA, and I took a look at the vision and the mission and the open technology framework, and the bold things I underlined they all say the right things, right? Coordination, efficient, open technology, interoperable, and we consider existing domain independent open standards. So the right words are there, and we're on the right track. We have been for the past few years. But we're not there yet. There's still work to do, so we don't have to stop working on our ontologies. So what have we seen so far in 3 small steps? 1, ontologies have been proven to be a corner piece for effective digital twins. 2, by far most ontologies rightfully apply W3C standards for open data. However, the reuse is still suboptimal. There are many different ontologies. People aren't able to find the right ones, or they only find out once they start talking to someone and they're already working on developing their own and they already have their mindset on some solution. So this is what we brainstormed about today, about improving. And we need to be somewhere between the scenario where there's 14 standards and you don't think it's the right standard, and you make the 15th standard. You keep doing this, still there's a million standards. That's probably too extreme of a situation to end up with. On the other hand, some other efforts we've seen, and this is actually one that we did within BDTA, some other efforts we've seen, they try to make one standard that rules them all. This also, well, it showed us that it doesn't work. So these are different ontologies, and they were mapped in an effort by our members, by our people, by our projects. And the mapping is right for some purpose, but then the next person comes along and it doesn't work for them. It doesn't fit their use case, it doesn't fit their needs, it just doesn't work, or they have a different opinion for some reason. And you end up with something else again. So we have a million of ontology mappings, and this is exactly what we try to optimize today. So we've seen 7 presentations in the morning. I will summarize my personal notes on them, like the key takeaway that I found interesting in each presentation. We saw that in Cogito, they used the graphical notation, and it really helped communication early on. However, this didn't really ensure that the communication happened early on. So there was a mechanism, but there wasn't the conversation yet. Bin to Twin, use case-based approach. Really good, right? So think about what you need or what someone needs before you start building something. And modeling choices of others were a challenge for alignment. So people found out that there was something good, but they couldn't reuse it because it didn't fit their needs. High store. There was a limited number of existing ontologies for their purpose. So that was a challenge, but it was also easy because it meant there was sort of a greenfield where High store could just model what they needed and what they thought was right. Easy. Judith, I couldn't name a project because there were several projects, and Judith showed us that she said, I'm not technical, so I can't give a technical presentation. And it was perfect because there's a non-technical expert, a domain expert, who knows something about the things we're modeling in ontology. So there's a real need for what she needed, and she was able to vocalize that really well. Yeah, so there was a good insight. Accord and check, it had an ad hoc, or they learned that an ad hoc process kicks issues down the road. So it's not your issue, but someone else has to deal with the issues that you leave open for them. They also learned that RDF is a key component, however, not a one-size-fits-all. So it's not, for instance, it doesn't work for storing information or for time series data. That might not be the best, even though it is going to play a role somewhere. Digichecks use the modularized abstraction levels in the ontology or the set of ontologies that they developed. So it allowed them to reuse something abstract, but define their own specific things below that. And it worked really well for them. And I wrote something on define selection criteria for, but I don't know for what. I think for the ontologies to reuse. So what they did was they defined 4 or 5 criteria and they ranked a bunch of ontologies against it and decided whether it was one they could use or not. Last but not least, Simne, they use RDF for information exchange and not for storage, so just for exchange. That was their key takeaway. So interesting stuff, right? Like I said, some steps were made the past few years. We held a discussion on this, and from the discussion, we formed the roadmap. And the roadmap, before we go to the roadmap, these are some of the activities that BDTA has coordinated the past few years. So the first 2 are done. The second is ongoing, the abstract ontology that's becoming a European standard. But the third, fourth, or the fourth, fifth, sixth are still things that we could work on. And if we plot these out in time, we see that BDTA was or is an initiator, and BDTA could play more and more a role of a facilitator in the future. So what does this mean? Well, it means that BDTA isn't just a platform where we discuss and where we align together as experts in research projects, but it also means that when someone wants to use an ontology for a digital twin, they will go to BDTA and see whether there is one. So they will search a catalog for ontologies or for a toolkit that helps them to implement these ontologies. So what we need in the upcoming years, not we BDTA, but each and every member, we all need this to be more interoperable, is to have a catalog that provides building digital twin ontologies for all, especially for those who are not ontologists, but just software developers or users, or I don't know, whoever thinks they need these ontologies. And we provide them with instructions on how to reuse, how to build forth, and what next steps to take. So when we achieve this in the future by incorporating these thoughts into our future project proposals and into our BDTA IPs, internal projects, I believe we will really end up with a situation where BDTA is a facilitator that actually helps people become interoperable, and ontologies are just an instrument in that, just one of the instruments. And I think this was the last slide, but I don't know. Yeah, it was.